What is up, everyone? So we've got Mr. Luke Miller back on from No Switch Fitness. He's the main man behind the plan with the training side of things. So Luke is excellent when it comes to all the coaching sides. So he will be having a lot of input into what I do across all bases, not just training, because I did have a conversation with Luke and I said, look, I still want to run my own coaching, but with the training side of things, I don't think there's a better person than yourself or possibly John that would be able to kind of help me and give me what I need in terms of support and further allowing me to develop myself as a bodybuilder with what you know, especially what you can bring to the table, with what you already busted my ass with a lot of things in past, even execution side of things. So, you know, it's definitely something that I wanted to do for quite some time. So Luke will be setting me up. Well, he already has set me up before my show with the training side of things. I've read it about a million times. So yeah, I'm excited to get stuck in. And today, 2 days post-show, we will actually be doing the first pull session. But first, I'll let Luke take us through exactly what we are going to do. As part of the series, like I said, the process, I will be taking you through exactly the ins and outs as to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it to be able to step up again, to be able to roll with the big boys the next time I step on stage in 2023.
Yeah. And so I think the big thing, Kuba, that was like possibly differentiated a little bit with this process was the information gathering on the forefront. I think when we look developmentally at, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so I can pull up the needs analysis for people to look through. When we look at like setting up someone's program, a lot of times the information gathering portion is what will determine how you set things up. And I don't see that done a lot. It's just hey, send me your pictures and let's just do this. And a lot of this ended up being a little bit more of a conversation between yourself and I. But it started obviously with the pictures. And so basically what happens is in that information gathering process is I'm walking through and noticing the recurring patterns that are coming through just from the posing. So things that could be possible issues like the external rotation one that we talked about within like your front double bicep and your back double bicep. And then just developmentally where we saw some of the lower body development issues can often suggest some of the movement capacity differences that we see. And basically what we did was after I went through the pictures and mapped this out, I sent you what I thought were tests that we needed to assess to see where you were before I even wrote the sessions. And we went through a walking lunge test, a goblet squat test, and a split squat test for the lower body. And then for the upper body, just isolated external rotation and a kettlebell bottom under. And for the lower body, we saw that like lack of internal rotation where you actually do hide it pretty well in a walking lunge, but it exposed itself in the split squat. And then on the isolated external rotation test, a little bit of discrepancy left to right, but more just overall access issues. So when we go into especially kicking it off with a pull day, we need to look at how can we train the lat within those lack of access issues. So for you, Kuba, we knew that, you know, that lack of external rotation is going to limit anything in a bilateral movement pattern to be able to align that elbow under the wrist into the shoulder.
Absolutely. That definitely made sense because in past, every single time I used to do any pull down using both my hands, I was like, this just feels terrible. Like compared to what I can do single arm, it's literally a waste of time.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest point to make here is like, when you're going through this process, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be addressing the issues because we are going to be doing some things within the prep work side to start to address this. But we have to be productive. As bodybuilders, we need to be able to output as much as we can within the sessions while we address some of the capacity issues elsewhere. And so that's where like during this block, we won't be doing anything bilateral for the lat. And it might be a few blocks before we do anything bilateral for the lat, right? The goal here is not to completely nix bilateral for the rest of your career. It's to output now where we can, address the issues, and then possibly reintroduce down the line. And so I'm assuming you're going to be doing the first pull one, just to kind of walk.
No, actually, because the way it's landed, we're actually doing the second pull session today, and then doing the hamstrings after. So
Gotcha.
yeah, that's actually the one that we're going to be doing today. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see like both of the lat patterns, the single arm underhand pull down and the single arm cable row, are both setups where he can move his entire body to align with the cable. And this is completely due to that external rotation capacity, right? And then the overhand T-bar row is more just out of I consider the overhand T-bar row a more ideal pattern for overhand rowing. We have the load taper from the actual rotating bar. As you pull, it allows you to kind of set up height-wise where you need to pull directionally in the plane. And it allows for intention, like through your hands, to create tension in that corkscrewing out fashion. So this is where like this setup kind of comes from, is like both lat patterns are addressing the function capacity. The overhand T-bar row is what we consider the ideal here, because when we look at your back, like across the upper back, traps, teres, pretty strong. We need a little more rear delt, but the lats are the big thing that stands out. And so we're not going to have a lot of volume within those overhand planes. And so we need to make sure that we're choosing the best patterns in order for you to output it.
Yeah.
And
so
so
that session as well.
Yeah. And this is one that's like the volume landmarks here, and the viewers probably can't see it, but it's 2 sets for each pattern. Aren't low when you execute this, but it's also high relative to the rest of the sessions, and it's going to become higher as we move forward, because we've walked through and set this up, and we probably should go through the split setup here.
This is the split setup as well. It literally is perfect too.
Yeah, so we're running a 2-on-1 off with a little bit of a logic here behind how this was set up. So, and then I'll kind of jump into the volume landmarks real quick. But we wanted to ensure that both legs and pull had a session coming off of a rest day. Reason being is when we looked at the needs analysis, there were a couple of things throughout the back that we needed to address, and a couple of things throughout the legs that we needed to address. And so this gives us the opportunity to have one session for each where we're fresh, and then another session that is pretty isolated for the weakest area of the back, which you'll see this other pull day is actually starting out with back-to-back lat patterns. So it's very, very isolated for lat-based training, and it's got a pullover in it. So 3 of the 4 back movements are lat-based. And then the other leg day is like a strict hamstring day. Now, one of the things I think we should touch on is the lack of a hip hinge here.
Yeah. People are gonna, oh my God, no.
No hip hinge.
No hip hinge, no. AJ,
Yeah, so,
AJ is actually gonna bust my ass for this,
Oh,
AJ,
I know AJ's gonna give you shit. We had a conversation about his deadlift 2 weeks ago. So the opposite session is more of like a not less intense, but it's not going to have as much major compound. It's going to be more directed towards the actual body part that's the weakest portion of like the back or the lower body that we want. And that's where this second hamstring day comes in. So coming off of post show, we already covered this in a previous podcast. The biggest goal is to get you being productive and not bury you out of the gate. So when we look at the movement selection, we're spending a lot of time within compounds within the first leg day. And so we need the majority of the leg volume towards hamstrings and adductors. And so this second session is just to build those volume landmarks up to where hamstrings are a little bit more dominant over quads and glutes. Because when we look at your legs, like hamstring adductors probably stand out the most relative to quads, glutes, and just overall need for size. So we kind of walk through that, and that hamstring day is going to go from a single-legged ham curl, which will be really shortened in-range hamstring, into a seated hamstring curl, which will be more lengthened in lengthened in hamstring range. Single leg press to build up overall capacity of quads, glutes, and adductors. The reason we do this single leg is it will require the adductor to stabilize the pelvis a little bit more. And so it will increase that adductor involvement within this pattern. And so again, pushing that adductor volume landmark up quite a bit by increasing its influence in the compounds. And then the same concept with the single leg 45 degree. So some people are going to wonder, like, why are we not doing a regular 45-degree back extension? And it's from that adductor perspective. So if we're going to train the hip hinge, we want to increase the adductor capacity in it by doing it single leg, but not introducing the major RDL that's going to limit recovery capacity. And because we know Kuba likes to move some weight on a RDL and is quite glute dominant with a hip hinge.
I need more hamstrings, so.
Yeah, and like
to be a lot more specific, I definitely feel like, because like the conversation we had about my emotional attachment to certain lifts, like this program ticks off everything that I need from a mental standpoint to keep me happy, but it also takes away the movements that I would be very emotionally attached to that would hold me back from progression. Like, and that's still the ability when I'm coaching myself. That's still something I'm unable to do many times. Like, I would set myself a program design, right? And I would go in the gym, I would feel good, and I'd be like, right, this is what I've got planned, but I feel good. And, you know, I'm going to do this. Whereas with this, I know exactly the reason why we're doing this. And there's no way I would deviate from that, because everything makes sense and everything there is structured towards exactly what I need moving forwards to really be able to move forward again with physique. So definitely on point with that.
And I think one of the things to kind of notice, like, it doesn't mean the hip hinge will never come back in.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a product of this phase and needing to be very specific with where we're spending our training volume. And then when recovery capacity comes back up and we have that open, it will be an option on the table for bringing in a global stimulus, because you can't argue, like, you can generate a lot of tension if the RDL is done correctly through a hip hinge, right? And so and we had talked about this in the past, worry that a part of the lack of back development is from spending so much time hip hinging.
Yeah. I honestly think this off season, because I prioritize the hip hinge over my back movements, I feel like it's definitely taken away from back development. Like, I have made some good progress from the rear, but I honestly think it could have been better. Like, if that was my program design a year ago, I would have been further ahead of where I am right now, I believe.
Well, let's talk about that too, right? So the introduction of the hip hinge.
Yeah.
If we look at the split structure setup, the hip hinge would go on the hamstring day. And the question there should be why. One, because we know that it will have some carryover in the back, but it'll be done after we've done our pull session.
Yeah.
And it'll be on a leg day where there's no other back movements for it to affect. So that's kind of where, like, again, the split setup's not only for the here and now, but it's kind of forecasting what's to come in the future is that. And then also, like, when we look at volume progressions within the pull days, a lot of them are going to come right here, coming off of this rest day. Right. And so that's kind of where, like, again, the split setup should not only be specific to the structure, should be specific to forecasting what's to come within the progressions of the training block. And so that's where, like, this needs analysis and information gathering needs to happen at, like, a really high level, in my opinion. Like, and you can see, like, these are just things that I think need to be prioritized to drive solutions in pretty much every body part that I see issues possibly. Right. And then once that information gathering is done, I can now write a program that's very specific. And I think that's probably the main issue that we see is, like, Kuba's a pro. He needs to act like a pro. He also needs his coach to treat him like a pro. And that's, like, the difference between moving someone like yourself up to the next stage level that we had talked about after the Arnolds, and not making it all the way to that next level. And I think that that's probably the big differentiating factor that would need to be covered.
Yeah.
Was there anything else within the training sessions that you wanted to cover before we?
I think that's it. Just wanted to give people a good overview as to what we're going to do and how. And obviously, as I'll be filming the sessions through, we will be talking over, obviously, what we're doing and how the sessions actually look in the videos as well. So that'll be pretty cool. But before I actually start the sessions, I wanted to get a little bit of intro and talk through the off-season plans and include the training, the diet, and everything else as to what I've got planned and how I'm going to roll with it as well. So that was pretty much it. So I'm excited to get stuck in. Today's the first session back, and yeah, I'm definitely good. I feel I don't feel too fatigued, so I'm ready for it. Which doesn't mean I'm going to go and kill myself. I'm not. I'm not.
Take over.
I was looking at your face then, thinking, yeah, I know what I was going to say. I know what I was going to say. But yeah, I feel good. I feel good. I actually had a good night's sleep, so I'm fresh. Back to my normal routine this morning. I had a lot of work to catch up on, but it's all caught up on. So I'm happy and ready to go, and just get Megs ready for her show next weekend, and it's go time.
There you go. I think I'm really excited for this training block. I think it's the most attention to detail that you've taken within your training. So I think the fruits of that labor will just elicit a lot of positive outcomes, and then be able to present a package that's 10 pounds heavier and way better.
Keep repeating that. Rinse and repeat. Let's go. Luke, thank you very much for your time. I will be having you back on, obviously, on the podcast. And as we do more content, as people are definitely loving the last one that we did. Well, the last two that we did, actually, the one with John as well. Massive response from that. So thank you very much, dude. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it as always.
Of course, man.
Take care.